Thank you, Lorraine, Gina, and the entire team at the Americas Innovation Center. My name is Justin Baird, and I'm the Head of Innovation for DHL across Asia Pacific. Based in Singapore, our Asia Pacific Innovation Center will be your host for the next 5 hours before we hand back to complete the 24-hour global virtual conference, DHL Logistics and Supply Chain Summit. We are living in an age of customer centricity, supply chain excellence, and megatrends like globalization, digitalization, e-commerce, and sustainability. A time that offers infinite possibilities to create opportunities that inspire and improve the way we work and live. We call it the era of logistics, and we have an exciting lineup of content and distinguished speakers who will be joining us to talk about many topics, including the future of work, sustainability, applied analytics, digital twins, 5G, and next-generation wireless. All of these topics are driving the era of logistics and literally changing our industry on a daily basis. Also, during the Asia Focus section of the summit, we will be showcasing some of the latest and most interesting new innovations by sharing the winning startups of our Asia Pacific Innovation Challenge. Our action-packed agenda will ensure that you get the most from this summit, providing both impactful and practical information, developed for great topicality and relevance to give you the best experience. Without further ado, let me hand over to Matt Lee, our Master of Ceremonies for the Asia Focus session of the summit. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Justin, and thank you all for joining us in the Asia Pacific segment of the DHL's Era of Logistics Summit. We have an explosive lineup of industry experts, business leaders, and innovators of tomorrow all ready to blow your mind. So I hope you are sitting comfortably with good audio and Wi-Fi connection as we kickstart our Asia Pacific segment with a power panel of senior DHL leaders. As the largest logistics company in the world, we consider the diversity of our workforce to be one of our greatest strengths. This panel will be moderated by Dr. Juliana Chan, who was one of LinkedIn's top voices for 2020, as well as a publisher of Asian Scientists. So we will hear from a panel of DHL women leaders on how they manage teams effectively in the future of work, what is the outlook of the future of logistics in Asia Pacific, and the important question that everyone is wondering, how to keep supply chains resilient in these COVID times.
A warm welcome to the Future of Logistics panel brought to you by DHL Asia Pacific Innovation Center. My name is Juliana Chan and I will be your moderator for today. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore headquartered science and tech media company Wildtype Media. You know, it must seem like an eternity ago, but it was actually only about 15 months ago that the pandemic began. And look at how much we have changed since then. We have adapted to severe travel and work restrictions. We have rallied behind country and business leaders, and scientists have developed an entirely new class of vaccines from messenger RNA. And these life-saving vaccines are being delivered to Singapore thanks to DHL's global network and medical supply chains. So keep them coming, please. We certainly need them. But is it all smooth sailing from here? Not quite, actually. The logistical challenges of bringing billions of doses to where they are needed remain staggering. There are, of course, new and highly infectious variants of the virus that keep emerging. And last but not least, companies are grappling with how to manage and support their employees remotely. So therefore, DHL Innovation Center has invited 5 industry experts who are all based in Singapore today from the DHL family to share with us their outlook for the logistics sector in the Asia Pacific. They will also share with us their thoughts on the future of work, how they are managing and leading their teams remotely, and for DHL customers, how DHL is keeping its supply chains resilient in these COVID times. So I would like to introduce all our speakers. First, we have Mary Oxley, Regional Sector Head, Consumer and Retail Asia Pacific, DHL Global Forwarding. And next we have Audrey Gerard, Director and Head of Automobility Sector, Asia Pacific, DHL Customer Solutions and Innovation. Next, we have Leonora Lim, Vice President, Life Sciences and Healthcare Asia Pacific, DHL Customer Solutions and Innovation. Carolyn Chu, Vice President, Business Development, DHL Express. And last but not least, we have Dipali Gulati, Vice President, Business Development Technology Sector, DHL Supply Chain. I'd like to give a warm welcome to our speakers. Hello, everyone. Hi. All right, I'm just going to invite all 5 of you to take a walk down memory lane with me. Maybe get a little bit retrospective here, to the point where all of us were blissfully unaware, maybe planning our summer vacations, thinking there was, a smooth year ahead, and bam, the pandemic began and took all of us by surprise. Could you maybe share with us what the organization looked like at that point, and how has it evolved since then? Perhaps we could start with Mary.
Thank you, Juliana. At the start of the pandemic, I would say that our purpose, connecting people, improving lives, was never more important. As we pivoted to a whole new way of working, the health and the well-being of our employees was extremely important. Also, it was critical during this period to be able to manage the evolving needs of our customers' supply chain. As the global pandemic hit the market, what we saw was markets shut down globally. And as a freight forwarder, we played a vital role in keeping our customers' supply chains moving, and at the same time, ensuring that we could move essential goods around the globe. But during this time, we faced one of the biggest disruptions. 100% of the passenger air freight capacity went away, which our industry is heavily reliant on. We found ourselves in a situation where we had to leverage and come up with new solutions to meet the demands of our customers. We were able to pivot towards and access additional capacity through our in-house charter network Starbroker, and redesign a charter network to secure the needs of our customers. And while the pandemic continues, we see this as a key critical requirement to be able to further minimize disruption to our customers.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing. And how about you, Audrey? What was it like for you in the organization about a year and a half ago?
Thank you, Juliana. So definitely the first priority was to deploy everyone offline and secure a right rollout and safety of all the employees. Myself, working in the automotive sector, I have to say that the industry has been heavily impacted, with around 80 to 90% of the plant being shut down around April and May in our big markets. Because of this pandemic, there were a big drop of demand. So our first priority was to help our customer to manage all these changes, the disruption, this cost reduction, reduction of inventory as well. But very quickly, we also support our customer in deploying PPE equipment across all their plants globally. And of course, we know that we wanted to support our customer and avoid any infection they could have in any of their sites globally, knowing that that could have a big impact on the people as well as on their operation. So we have worked on that heavily. And then later in Q3 last year, we've seen an increase of demand, which rebound in the auto industry. And then that's where we also start to support on all these movements and facing challenges toward the logistic disruption. As a group, we work on offering flexible solution, alternative transport mode, which we still do today in order to support our customer supply chain as much as possible.
And Leonora, you must have seen quite a bit of change because you are involved with the healthcare side of DHL. Please share with us your experience.
Sure, Juliana. Yeah, it was a jolt to the system when the pandemic descended on everyone. So priorities changed overnight from being business as usual. Suddenly, we were working with our customers, looking to move critical medical supplies, and given the very tight air freight capacity out there, so it was really a big shock to the system. And we had to adapt quickly. There were daily calls with customers to see what were the impact to their operations. But subsequently, along the way, a new rhythm and way of working was established. So we started to look ahead, look far into the horizon, what would be next, what's going to come up, and what would the logistics needs be. And it was around vaccine development and distribution. So we released a white paper sometime in Q3, end of Q3, and this was to be prepared for the vaccine distribution was to come. And you can say the rest is history.
Thank you. We certainly need those vaccines in Singapore. Thanks for bringing them in. Carolyn, how about you running a business, such a big business unit? How was it like in the organization last year and now?
Yeah, thanks, Juliana. Well, I guess from an operational perspective in Express, we had to quickly set up new processes and protocols in our network in order to minimize service disruption to our customers. And these include sanitization for our vehicles. We had to arm our delivery personnel with PPE to ensure their safety. We also had to establish new delivery protocols to reduce the spread of the virus. So, for example, contactless delivery procedures need to be enhanced. Safe distancing measures need to be put in place. So we also had to cope with capacity crunch with numerous flight cancellations, as Mary alluded to earlier, following country lockdowns, etc. And we had to readjust our service commitments to the customers and ensure full visibility is provided to keep them assured. Now, the pandemic situation has definitely tested the resilience of our network and our people to keep the business running amid the increasing disruption. I think it's encouraging to report that 18 months on, we stay intact as one team as we regularly review our business continuity plans, and we need to ensure that we mitigate the service level impact to our customers.
Well done, Carolyn. Thanks for sharing. And how about you, Deepali? How was it like in the supply chain?
Yeah, thanks, Juliana. I'm very interesting to hear everyone's inputs, right? So from a supply chain perspective, I would say, our business continuity procedures and processes were really put to the test and across the board, across the countries, right? And Singapore being one of the first countries to be hit, we very quickly developed our whole Team A and Team B process, both in the offices and in the warehouses. I would also like to say that we worked very closely at the time with the EDB because it was important to establish jointly really what emergency services actually were and establishing how crucial supply chain is in daily business and the fact that we are an essential part of everyday life. And also for our customers, we set up daily reporting and we gave them inputs on sites that were open, that were closed, the number of people we had in quarantine. We were tracking absenteeism across the region. And really our OPSEC community have ensured that 45,000 people are as safe as they can possibly be. One thing that is really critical for our operations to run smoothly was really the safety of our warehouse team and our workforce. And just looking at Singapore as an example, a lot of our workforce on a daily basis actually comes in from Malaysia. Yeah. And so for a few months, we actually provided accommodation for the staff that were coming in. And subsequently, we actually helped them to find permanent homes over here as well. Equally, we supported the Singapore government across their various sectors. And you can imagine a lot of the ministries at the time were very overwhelmed with a bunch of calls from the public. And we set up a COVID hotline. And this hotline actually runs 7 days a week. And this was really to support the various calls that were coming in from citizens and the public who were asking questions related to COVID measures, citizens who were looking to come back into the country, stay-at-home notices, quarantine notices, etc. So yeah, a lot has happened since the start of the pandemic. And of course, as we all know, things continue to evolve.
Thank you, Deepali, for the update, and thank you for sharing, all speakers. So we've talked about how the organization fared. Now, I want to ask everyone to get a little bit introspective. I want to know how you fared at an individual level. So could you share with me how COVID-19 has affected you personally in two ways? In the way you work, your work-life balance, maybe working remotely at home, and the way you lead and manage your teams. So I'm just gonna draw from the box and choose Leonara to start, please. How has COVID-19 affected you personally in the way you work and in the way you lead?
Thanks, Juliana. So yeah, it definitely affected the work-life balance, right? Suddenly we're all at home, right? There were many virtual meetings and long hours on the headset. And for myself, I have 4 children, so it was, fighting for physical space, Wi-Fi bandwidth, fighting for attention, right? So all these things you had to, manage at home, besides managing what's at work. But in terms of work, I've always had a good relationship with my team, and that's built on trust. They do not have to be in front of me all the time, and we're used to this way of working away from each other. But what I consciously reminded myself was to be a bit more sensitive, a bit more empathetic, to look out for any cues or signs if anyone was having challenges or issues or even burnout, right? That would happen, from being isolated or kept at home for long periods of time. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. 4 children, 2 adults, 6 computers, probably. And how about you, Carolyn?
Yeah, about there.
And how about you, Carolyn? How was it like for you? And how have you evolved as a leader and in your working style?
Yeah, I think we all have to accept that remote work and virtual meetings are the norm now. I'm one of those weirdos who like to go to the office every day and on time. So now it's a little bit of, absence here. I still recall back in late March last year, I was hosting a webinar and I was asked to evacuate the office immediately because of a potential infection at our retail counter. And I actually had to rush to our Innovation Center office to get a connection to continue my webinar. So, from that day onwards, I had to adapt very quickly to working remotely and from home office, and over, the following month, set up a proper home office with a gaming chair, adjustable desk, and upgraded Wi-Fi network, right? And all without IT help desk. I think work-wise and management style, we need to be available for our teams, be in front of them virtually, keep them updated of the ongoing plans, and support their well-being. I mean, it's amazing how much empathy and encouragement can be delivered through a Zoom call when we engage our teams over just a virtual breakfast update. I think more than ever, we all agree that we need to ensure that employee engagement remains our top focus.
Thank you, Carolyn. And how about you, Deepali? What was it like for you at home and as a leader?
Yeah, I echo a lot with what both Leo and Carolyn have said, right? For me personally, I think one of the bigger positives was that my husband, who normally travels for 2 months at a time, with obviously all the border closures, he was here through all of this. And that was a big support for me, especially as my 10-year-old started with home-based learning. And I think that was very new for a lot of us. And I must say we struggled. And it was really nice that he could be here to help us through that time as well, because I had a lot of night calls. I was actually leading a global project at the time with a US-based customer. So having my husband around was, I can safely say, a big relief for me at the time. I think just from a work perspective, one of the things I realized is the word compassion, came to mind a lot of times, right? And I know we've spoken about empathy as well. It was really just understanding that everyone was dealing with the situation very differently. There was no one way to deal with the entire team. And really just finding the balance between the right amount of conference calls, not choking up people's calendars, and constantly being in their face. Equally, I would say I think I learned to enjoy virtual team lunches, virtual Friday evening pub quizzes. So yeah, things kind of evolved, and it was very interesting to see how the whole team really came together. So yeah, it's been very interesting so far.
I mean, there are very few good things about the pandemic, but the silver lining, of course, is that spouses are now based at home, and as you mentioned, your husband has not been traveling for 2 months. So, okay. And I like the idea that you were having pub quizzes and virtual lunches. Well done. Well done, Deepali. And on to you, Mary. How was it like for you at home and perhaps leading your remote teams?
Thanks, Juliana. So I concur with Deepali and Leonora in terms of, work-life balance, working from home, also pivoting towards home-based learning for my 10-year-old son. And likewise to Deepali, if I didn't have the support of my husband to help, especially with, I suppose the excessive workload at the time, it would have been extremely difficult. I think one of the more fortunate things was, I lead a team across Hong Kong, Singapore, and India. We were already very used to working in a virtual environment. So we'd already, I suppose, transited to that some time back. So it was the new normal for us. I think one of the most difficult things really was getting used to not traveling, not physically going to see our customers face to face and having that connection. And really to, I suppose, transport that to Zoom, to Microsoft Teams was a huge, big learning curve for us. I think from a personal perspective, working with my team, I found that I had certainly, as Leonora mentioned, a huge amount of more empathy. I was very sympathetic to their situation because everybody's going through various different things within their life and with their families. I think one of the key things for me also was tail end of last year when one of my team members in India reached out to me to share with me that he tested positive with COVID, which was quite hard. His mom had just recovered. He just moved from Bangalore back to Mumbai, and his situation deteriorated really bad. He ended up in hospital. And I think as a manager and a leader trying to support somebody from afar, I really felt that there was a personal connection there and a responsibility to still connect with him, make sure that he was okay. And I think that incident really, as a team, certainly brought us together a lot closer, being able to support from afar. But from, and it put the human conversation really into perspective that we're all in this together. And I think we're there to support each other. From a work-life balance, really having that space to exercise early in the morning, which really set me up for the day. And I think the days where I didn't do it, then I wasn't myself and I wasn't so successful. I think staying connected to family, friends, clients, similar to what Deepali mentioned, having that connection over various different activities with your team, I think was really, really critical. From a management style perspective, being more aware of each other, and giving each other space and just being there as a sounding board and being, more empathetic to their needs, I think really was key. Yeah. So it was a massive shift. But I think together, we're stronger, we're a better team, and we connect now much more than we probably would have done in the past.
Thank you, Mary. I can agree with you on the bit about exercise. Having remote work allows us to, just hop out, do a little bit of exercise and, hop back in. So that's terrific. Of course, Audrey, on to you. How has the pandemic affected you at home personally, and how have you changed as a leader?
Yeah, so on my side, I didn't have to experiment the home-based schooling. I think so that was probably a difference. But I have a young child, so I would say the positive part of that is I could see him growing. And at this age, any small moments matter. So that was the positive aspect of that. Of course, it created also a bit of confusion for him. Why some of the day I will ignore him and just stay in a room closed, and some other day, like the weekend, I will play with him. So I think there were some adjustments and of course to do, but on that side, I have to say that that was a positive part. Of course, having a regional role, that was a big difference, working from home and engaging with a team with based around 5 countries around, Asia Pacific. And I have to say, it's not only a working from home requirement, as we realize we are really in the middle of a big pandemic, with still today countries being highly exposed by risk, where some of my colleagues are sitting, which are creating a lot of additional anxiety and stress. And on top of that, the borders are closed for business, but as well on the personal side. So if some members have family living far, or if they are not in their home country, that's all of this environment are creating additional, personal impact. So of course, in terms of engagement, really, I have, of course, engaged and make sure to understand and talk about all of this topic, which probably in the past we are engaging maybe less on the personal side. So I think we open up much more as a manager to be more flexible, understandable. We, of course, cannot stop the pandemic, but we can really support our teams with discussion, with also alternative solution wherever we can. And of course, I had also in my team 2 new team members that still today I've never met them since they joined, and one is since 1 year and a half. So who could have believed that could happen? But it still works, and I think we are also trying to do some engagement through virtual activity, but also more personal activities. Try to know each other not only on business topic, but also more on virtual topic as well. So I really believe that creating this sense of belonging is more than ever important today when we have this crisis around us. And I can see that bringing the team actually even stronger together to fight during this pandemic.
Thank you, Audrey. I mean, isn't it amazing now how we can hire people on Zoom and work with them for a year or two, without having met them? In the past, we needed to fly them over, right, to HQ, do the interview in person. Only then would they fly back and get hired. So that's the incredible change of how businesses are running. And okay, I want to move on to a different topic because we talked about the past, we talked about the individual. Now I want to talk about DHL's customers. DHL won't be what it is today without its customers. I want to find out from our leaders, especially those who run customer solutions teams, on how your customers' needs have changed and how DHL is meeting its customers' expectations as the pandemic continues. Maybe we'll start with Mary, perhaps.
Diana. So while the pandemic, I would say, has brought a huge amount of disruption to our customers, I think what we've also recognized that during this time, that it's also provided our customers with a real opportunity to rethink their supply chains and redesign now for the new normal. I think today the market is still quite dynamic. There is huge volatility still in the sea freight market. And e-commerce, continues to be, one of the rising stars where consumption is increasing globally. We're not traveling, so our whole buying habits have changed. So the customer portfolio that I look after, what I can see is that their needs are very much, influenced by the market. So if we take, for example, Asia, in Asia by 2025, 50% of the consumers will be millennials and Gen Z, which is significant, which is huge. And, Gen Z, millennials, they're very digital savvy. So what that means, for our customers, it's really important that they have the leverage across their online and offline platforms and that they're digitally advanced to really support the needs of the customers. So I think a big trend is kind of moving towards omnichannel and e-commerce platforms, having the stock in the right place to be able to access it. So we're seeing a huge, big shift, in customer demand. And I think we as a freight forwarder, DHL Global Forwarding, it's super important that we understand, our customers' expectations. We have a strong partnership in place, and we're really able to leverage that to continue to mitigate supply chain risk for them and to continue to be a partner going forward to ensure, providing capacity in a market which continues to be so volatile today.
Thank you, Mary. Leonora, you run Customer Solutions and Innovation CSI team. Tell us what you see as a shift in customer expectations and how you're meeting it.
So for our customers, it depends on the products that they are making, because for the life science and healthcare sector, if you are providing medicines, people still get sick, right? No matter the time of the year or the day. So medicines will still need to be transported. We still need to keep these medical supply chains going. But of course, if there are certain elective surgeries, right, then some of these products we would see a lower volume, lower movements, right, because these are not needed. The priority is to ship the PPE, critical medical supplies. And for DHL, we've always adhered to the high expectations and standards of our customers with regards to quality, temperature control. And during this time, there is no change. In fact, we see that all the investments we have put in the last 20 years reaping, the fruits, because what we have set in place is critically needed, and it's helping us to actually help our customers keep their supply chains running. So, at the heart of what we do, we always, want to connect and serve the patient at the end of, of the supply chain, and that hasn't changed at all.
Thank you very much, Leonora. Audrey, perhaps you, because you can tell us more because of what you do at CSI, and I believe you have a very close communication with your clients and so on.
Yeah, so definitely on my side, from an automotive industry, as I said earlier, 2020 was a big drop of demand with 20% of drop. And still today, it's really difficult to forecast how will be the growth because it's all depending on the lockdown in the different countries as well as the pandemic. So for our customer, it has been very challenging year, trying to first reduce the inventory, but also quickly respond to the increased demand, added to a very, disrupted supply chain, especially out of Asia. We know this container shortage out of Asia, where the auto industry is sourcing a lot of components, raw materials, and parts from this region. So, of course, since the past couple of months and still today, we are working on creative solution, finding capacity on the market, leverage our large service offering within the group, leveraging express for spare parts, leveraging our ocean freight forwarding activities, rail business, and as well as any solution that can help our customer in this very dynamic market. We also develop solution like multimodal sea air out of India to send parts into our customer in Latin America. So the auto supply chain is very just in time. So of course, that's why we need to find a way to develop this solution for our customer. So more than ever, they look for capacity. They look for big players who can support with this type of creative ideas. And that's something we'll continue to do in order to ensure the less disruption as possible in their supply chain and make sure that they produce their car and satisfy their end customer.
Thanks, Audrey. And Carolyn, what was it like in Express? How has your customer needs changed?
Yeah, thanks, Juliana. I think as mentioned by my fellow colleagues earlier, many of our customer supply chains have been disrupted, by this pandemic. Many had to quickly look for new suppliers, alternative manufacturing locations, and adjust their resources to meet the fluctuating demand. They also have to review the stability of their operations and definitely require transparency in their logistics network. In fact, we are in ongoing discussions with many customers to look at options in terms of BCP planning, new trade lanes, new markets. Now, obviously, the move to consider and implement these options has accelerated, even though the speed to change is impacted due to ongoing challenges, such as new waves of COVID-19 infections and country lockdowns. So as a key logistics service provider in Express, we need to make available the required transparency and visibility of our network services to support our customers in keeping their supply chains going. Customers want to be kept informed of updates with regards to our services, how the industry is impacting, and adapting, how the pandemic situation is evolving. They are less up to date on transit times and capacity. So our job is to update them with the latest. So in Express, we have created digital channels of communication with up-to-date information posted on our websites and social media pages. Now, we obviously hope to make our customers' lives easier, as they are also grappling with how to manage during this crisis. So, hopefully through all this, we manage to build and maintain their trust in our services and in DHL.
Thanks, Carolyn, for sharing. Last but not least, Dipali. As you run the business development technology sector of DHL supply chain, how have your customers' needs changed? And how are you servicing them?
Thanks for that, Juliana. And I definitely echo a lot with what my colleagues have said across the various sectors and our business divisions right now. Looking at technology as a sector, we were significantly hit. And as you'd imagine, a lot of our high-tech customers are really the backbone of a lot of our businesses and our homes as well, right? And what we found was that tech customers are really looking to reduce their manufacturing dependency on one geographical area. And we've actually been supporting a lot of these customers with things like network studies, looking for alternate sites. One thing that came out clear was we found that there were a lot of RFIs that came to us where customers were really looking for alternate manufacturing sites. And I know Carolyn alluded to that as well. So really we were looking at countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, etc. And another thing we noticed here in Singapore was that as the borders were shut and many other countries had lockdowns, a lot of our customers actually diverted their shipments here into Singapore. Yeah? And very quickly, we actually had to scale up for significant volumes, almost going up to 40%. and equally having to secure more manpower in a very short period of time. And I guess that just goes to show, right, to the points that my colleagues were making, that plants were being shut, sites were being shut. So we really had to adapt and change really quickly, I would say. A key development that we also saw was that many of our customers and their IT departments actually were starting to feel the strain and the stress of actually managing the IT equipment and accessories for their growing remote workforce. And we were actually approached by Google to support them with their work from home needs to cater to exactly this, right? And we responded very quickly by introducing a new work from home supply chain solution. And we then turned that solution into a product because we realized that a lot of large corporations and organizations are all looking for the same thing, yeah? Keeping the well-being of their employees and their safety in mind. How do you get equipment and devices and everything that you need to function normally in your house? Yeah. So we worked on this solution, and we started rolling out this product across the region, and especially in India. I would say we've supported a lot of the tech customers, and we've also backed this up with a lot of value-added services that include things like imaging of your device, putting in required software, etc. And equally, when you manage the returns, looking at how we take care of things like data erasure, data wiping, to name a few. Now, reports and polls have actually showed that I think 48% of employees will continue to work from home. Yeah? And so we see that this trend is going to carry on. And being at the forefront of this, we continue to evolve, we continue to adapt, and we continue to formulate new solutions to cater to the ever-changing needs of our customers.
Thank you, Dipali, for sharing. And I'm very glad to hear about all the steps all our 5 industry leaders are taking in the pandemic. And I really like what you said, Dipali, about the work from home solution. Don't we all need that right now? All right, so we've taken a blast into the past. We talked about the start of the pandemic and how the organization looked. We've also talked about current needs by our customers. But I would like to ask our speakers now to go into the future, shall we? Let's take a blue sky view of what the logistics sector will look like in the future, and perhaps how COVID is accelerating these trends. We are looking at everything from digitalization to e-commerce and even sustainability. So perhaps all our speakers can tell us what they think will be the outlook for the sector in the next 3 to 5 years to come. Perhaps, hopefully at the end of it, we'll be out of COVID, but who knows? Who would like to take a stab at it? Let's invite Audrey perhaps, because the automobile sector is of course extremely dynamic and exciting.
Sure. Thanks, Juliana. So definitively, I talk about some of the demand drop in the sector, but very interesting. You will hear that last year we had 43% of growth in the electric vehicle segments. And COVID has only accelerated this sustainability. So 43% growth, which represents 3 million of vehicles globally, with 1.3 million being out of China. And the reason of that growth are definitively different factors: governments, policies, incentive accelerating, and the OEM to really change and produce electric vehicle. But COVID-19 has also give a strong sense for end consumer to focus more on the environments in view of the current pandemic that we are facing. So we do see an increase, and that will definitively accelerate moving forward. Today it represents less than 2% of the overall sales, but just by 2030, that will represent 25 to 30%. So that's definitively a big change. And of course, a big new requirement for the industry, because we talk about battery logistic, moving lithium battery across the globe, changing the supplier base, rolling out charging stations. So the entire ecosystem is actually changing. And in DHL, we are working with our customer to definitively support them in all this dynamic change that the industry is facing. Of course, we've seen as well, components like chips and so on that are also more required in electric vehicle. And of course, the OEM, when you produce an electric car, you want it to be the most sustainable as possible, including your logistic. That's why today in our discussion with our customer, we talk even more about offering alternative sustainable solution in terms of alternative fuel or different, type of building and all kind of solution to make their supply chain even greener. And just on another trend that we have seen accelerating is as well the digitalization. With all the disruption that we've seen today on the supply chain, there is a clear need to have much more visibility, track and trace, as well as find some contingency plan and risk management. And we have recently really reinforced with our customers some of these solutions that we have within the group that will also remain a big path of digitalization moving forward for their supply chain.
Thanks for sharing, Audrey. I'm already excited for this future that you described. Sounds very optimistic to me. Maybe Mary, you could share with us, because you take a look at retail and consumer, and I can only imagine how e-commerce is changing the way logistics will play a part in this.
Thank you, Juliana. In terms of the fashion and retail industry, what I'll focus on first will be around, sustainability, probably just closing off on Audrey's topic. Today, we've seen it as one of the key drivers for many fashion companies and retail companies. It was already really important before the pandemic, but COVID-19 really has accelerated this even further. So when we look to consumer requirements, China today for fashion from a manufacturing standpoint, but also from a consumption market, is extremely important. Just there recently, China's fashion show this year, sustainability was a core theme in it. Young millennials in China, they're more purpose-driven. They care about the environment. They want to have a positive impact. So that's the trend that we're really starting to see. But also from a customer perspective, what we see now with some of our key customers, particularly in the luxury segment, that they've introduced a pre-qualification stage of sustainability before we can actually move through the RFQ process. And that's really putting the onus back on DHL to make sure that we have the right solutions in place to support the industry. And a couple of things that we've done quite recently, we introduced an LCL ocean freight carbon neutral product, at no extra cost to customers, to be able to, obviously reduce carbon emissions. And only recently we've signed an agreement with United Airlines to fund the purchase of sustainable aviation fuels. So I think, in that regard, we recognize that DPDHL really has, a key role to play. Coming back to your point on the e-commerce side of things, I think e-commerce goes, hand in hand with fashion and retail. Many organizations, in particular, let's talk about footwear, for example. We know some of our customers have a very aggressive strategies that within the next few years that they're expecting 50% of their sales to come from e-commerce. So I think it's extremely important. And this is an area as DPDHL that we leverage right across the group, because global forwarding, while we manage the port to port, the airport to airport, we really leverage on our partners in DHL Express to be able to offer those customized e-commerce solutions for customers today. So really important, really, really critical. Certainly not something that's going to go away. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, consumers today are more digitally savvy. So it's really important that we have the solutions in place to be able to support their requirements going forward.
Thank you for sharing, Mary. Deepali, you alluded to this earlier about the work from home solution. I wonder what digitalization trends are going to be accelerated in this pandemic. Would you please share with us what you think?
Yeah, thanks for that, Juliana, and happy to share. And, if I look at the technology vertical across the various subsectors that we have, whether they are consumer electronics, consumer devices, networks, telco, 5G, of course, home appliances, and semicon, I feel like we are starting to see a little bit of a recovery. Especially, I would say, with our semiconductor customers, yeah. And I think one of the things we're seeing is, growth. I would say almost anticipating 5 to 6% over the next few years. Another trend that we're seeing that will grow, and hopefully everyone agrees with this, is really around smart TVs, smart watches, smart glasses, right? And reports show that they're slated to go somewhere between 15 to 20%. To your point around digitalization, I would say from a supply chain perspective, COVID has accelerated digitalization for all of us. And we are looking into providing more portals and visibility of the product across the supply chain through various tools. Another thing I would say is, the whole human and machine collaboration will accelerate. I think we always need to find the right balance and the optimum safe space to use that. There's definitely been an increase in the uptake from a DHL supply chain perspective around accelerated digitalization, and we have a global agenda around this. And we've seen 2,000 projects or more across 950 sites for us globally. If I just take, for example, APAC, looking specifically at Korea, we've deployed 3 robotic arms, and this has been put in place really to streamline the efficiency for our packaging operations, actually. Another really good example of digitalization and robotics is really in Tokyo, where we implemented a robotic goods to person solution. And this was for a really large technology client of ours. So we'll continue to see this particular topic evolve. We will continue to see a lot of technology. And from a supply chain perspective, we have actually shortlisted 12 technologies that we see will bring us a lot of benefit and enable our customers grow with us on this journey of digitalization.
Thank you for sharing, Deepali. Carolyn, how about you? From DHL Express, I'm sure you have a bird's eye view of the e-commerce sector as well.
Yeah, thanks, Juliana. I think as a compulsive online shopper, I have to talk about e-commerce. I think suffice to say, the surge in e-commerce has definitely presented our sector with unprecedented growth opportunities, and this growth will continue. I think, just alluding to what Mary mentioned a little bit earlier on, the buying behavior of our consumers, and including B2B buyers, changed significantly and shifted more and more into the online world. We have observed that consumers increasingly expect a seamless digital experience with simpler, more personalized products and services, and with faster delivery. Now, this pandemic has definitely affected changes in purchasing behavior of tech-savvy millennials, right, and Gen Z, who are actually now making up the group of professional B2B decision makers that we are dealing with every day. And they are the main drivers of this global e-commerce growth. Now, in a white paper that we recently released on B2B e-commerce, we predict that the business-to-business e-commerce market will grow by more than 70% to over $20 trillion in the next 5 years. In fact, 80% of all B2B sales interactions between suppliers and professional buyers will take place in digital channels by 2025. And that's just less than 4 years away. So it is through this white paper and customer discussions that we aim to share market insights, real life examples that will showcase the potential that our customers need to see in this digital age. And in order to support the growth and demands of this sector, DHL Express has implemented several initiatives to ensure that we provide efficient e-commerce logistics solutions. Such initiatives include on-demand delivery preferences and optimized final mile fleet with greener options. And this is also to support the sustainability agenda that Mary mentioned earlier on.
Thank you for sharing, Carolyn. And last but not least, Leonora. Of course, we've seen a surge in demand for vaccines, PPE, and other COVID-related supplies. But how will that change in the next couple of years? Is it going to be sustained? Is it going to reduce, or is it going to go even higher?
Thanks, Juliana. We expect the vaccine distribution to continue. In fact, I think it's going to increase even because we need to look at new patient groups, booster shots. So we need to make sure that we have the scale, right, and the capacity, the capability to continue with the vaccine distribution where it's needed. In fact, in the world today, there are only 4 countries that have more than half their populations vaccinated. So you can see, in the world of over 200 countries, we still have some way to go to make sure that we achieve the herd immunity throughout. Yeah. But in terms of technology, even before COVID, there is already a convergence of technology and healthcare. I think a good example that's close to us would be like the wearables we have, right? That would give us our vital signs and linking it up through doctors remotely and doing remote consultations. So we expect this to continue, in fact, and we see an increase of interest from our customers to try to bring products closer to their patients, right? Leading to more home care, self care. So they're looking at new models like direct to patient, direct to market. That's what we see that's going to come up. We also see an acceleration, in the Internet of Things, right, for visibility, quality, and data purposes. So these are some of the examples where we think the life science and healthcare sector is tending towards. Yeah.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Leonora, for your bird's eye view of the future of logistics. As per the name of this panel, we've come almost to the end of our panel, and I would like to use this opportunity to invite all five of you to think of a word or a phrase to describe your outlook, your optimism for the sector. I'm just going to call Dipali to start. What is that word or phrase that comes to mind immediately when you think of logistics sector in these next few years?
I would say, firstly, that's a very interesting question. But I think for me, the first word that comes is balance. And I know I spoke a little bit about this earlier. So from a logistics point of view, really, I would say balance in terms of supply chain from a manufacturing to delivery perspective, balance of trade, and equally, I would say balance in our personal lives as well.
Finding balance, I would say, that would be something I look forward to as well. I feel out of balance somehow in this circuit breaker light. All right, moving on, Carolyn. What word comes to mind or phrase?
Well, I would say that one word is resilience. We have done so well, over the past 18 months. I think in 2021, the logistics industry is still quite uncertain. We're still impacted by reduced air freight capacity and active COVID-19 infections and restrictions. But I'm sure with all that we have each and collectively achieved, we will adapt and thrive for the rest of the year ahead. Fingers crossed. I'm pretty sure about that.
Fingers crossed. Leonora, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I think it's about personalization, right? As customers are looking more towards control over their house care, right? As we, as they look towards more home care, self care, I think the word for me would be personalization. Yeah.
Audrey?
Yeah, on my side, I would say agile creativity. I mean, we've seen the logistic being heavily disrupted, and that will remain, combined as well with accelerated trends that we've seen. We cannot operate the supply chain as we used to do. We need to be creative, have an open mindset, being open for change, but also in an agile way, because everything is moving extremely fast. And I think within DHL, that's what we really encourage our teams to do, and to be creative and really do the extra mile to support our customer so that they have really the best supply chain and really adapt to all these trends.
Well done. And last but not least, Mary, what comes to mind?
So I'm going to echo what Audrey says, because the world that we're living in today in global forwarding, agility and capacity are key for our customers. So I think really the ability to react quickly and to adapt to changing market conditions, as we really continue to, work through a volatile market, in particular in the ocean freight market today. So I think, one word is really to be prepared to change.
A warm thank you to our five speakers for joining us today. From digitalization to e-commerce and even sustainability, COVID-19 is certainly dramatically changing the face of logistics in the Asia Pacific. At the end of our panel, some of our speakers talked about the need for, creativity, agility, and customization. And other speakers talked about the need for balance and resilience. Once again, I would like to thank my five speakers for so graciously sharing with us their thoughts on leadership, their ideas, and their optimism for the logistics sector. And on behalf of Singapore, I would like to thank DHL for sending those vaccines to us. Keep them coming, please. My name is Juliana Chan. Thank you for your time today.